In this episode, I have a conversation with a guest who is not so unfamiliar.
Obviously, as people can tell, we look together. And I am the elder brother.
I have a conversation with one of the founders and directors of a real estate and construction company.
Kwa kichwa yangu nakuwa nakuita mini Ruto. Mostly because you and Lad Grape.
We speak about his upbringing and his journey growing up.
You know, growing up with that kind of setup, and especially for me in that position, I was a bit older when Dan passed on. You see some of the struggles that your parent goes through.
And we get to understand his fascination with the industry he's in.
You go and understand why is it that someone is borrowing money to be able to acquire this particular property. So that's something that made me love this particular industry.
Now, obviously, as people can tell, we look together. Yeah. Yes. And I am the elder brother. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, but I think every time mtu ananiuliza kama obviously siwezi kataa ndugu juu mtu akipata mtu afaa miaka kidogo jet na swali mingi zitaulizwa. Kwa kichwa yangu huwa naputa mini Ruto. Mostly because you and Lad Grape. But legal. Yeah, legal. Inansipotee tafadhali that nimekuwa abducted. So you got into the real estate business, and you started your own nut. But before fike hapo, there's a lot that went into that coming to fruition. Yeah. So let me take us back kidogo, and this is basically me trying to get your own version of events, even though we have shared history. Yeah. First of all, for people who may not know, for majority of our lives, we've been brought up with a single mom. Dad passed away young. Yeah. And we've been living in a single parent household. So I think swali yangu ni that, do you think that being in that position, being in that situation, really influence you being where you are, Sai?
I'd say yes, mainly because, you know, growing up with that kind of setup, and especially for me in that position, I was a bit older when Dan passed on. You see some of the struggles that your parent goes through. So you try to find means and ways of trying to help that kind of situation. So for me, I had to try and find means and ways of doing that early on rather than later, because at the end of the day, people must eat, people must live, you need to live under rules, with clothes. So you find that I dived into the job market a bit early, just trying to make ends meet here and there. So yeah, I would say it has shaped my experience into where I have today.
Yeah. And even before umalize high school and got into the job markets, nakumbuka even kiwa meme. When you're in high school,
yes,
it was a thing for you. Because I've always known you to be a people person. When you to a proper extra, and that is something totally different from who I am. And so, considering there's a sema when did you kama my John the Baptist, and you made the way for me to get into the world, and people who knew you before, and people who came to know me as your brother, like these are two very different people. Because one is very outspoken, very social, the other is a bit recluse, amejieka tu kindani. But story na biashara ilianza kitambo. So is it something that you grew into, ama ni kitu tu that clicked for you kutoka kitambo and you were aware that this clicked for me?
I would say it's basically instinct. It's not being nurtured in the same kind of environment, because you see, for most Africans, you find in a home it's very rare kupata ati familia inaelea mtoto into that kind of line of business and all that. We mostly see it with the Asian of which I feel we need to have more of that. Need to adopt that kind of culture from the Asians. But for me, it was just instinct, because you see, even just as you say from high school, unapata you go into business because you need to survive. Like you remember where Benekai was and where home was. It was a long walk.
Hey, brother, who you
so nilitembea nikajiambia, I need to find a way, nitaacha kutembea. And at least back then life was a bit simple, things were affordable. So I used to do biashara ndogo ndogo for the purpose of kupata that fare ya kuja shule na ya kurudi jio. So just as you say, unapata, you go, you buy some things like biscuits, nauzia students. And that time, bob ilikuwa na value. Nafukuzi kama saa hii unaenda na shilingi unafukuzwa kwa duka. Yet anauza kitu ya shilingi lakini hataki kuona.
Nafia change
inapeanwa na shilingi. So unapata, you used to do that pole to basically try and survive. But pole, I would say these are things zenye imefanya nimefika mahali nimefika, because those small strides unapata, they grow on you, they turn you into someone, you probably like it. Just like that.
Okay. Umesema something that we resonate on, that the African culture isn't rooted in basically bringing your children into what you do.
Yes.
We are mostly focused on profession.
Yes.
Titles, let's call it. And just, so nataka mtoto wangu akue daktari so and so, nataka mtoto wangu akue professor so and so, or engineer or architect or this or that. But find that the parent themselves might be in a particular business and is thriving, but the child knows nothing about that business. In comparison to Asian communities, I remember there's a time when we were talking with colleagues whosoever. He taught an Asian family the kids' music, and he made an observation that there are specific days where the parent takes the child to work. Na si ati tu lieli aoni ndio pia afanyi kazi. So from a very early age, the kid knows the ins and outs of the business, so that when the time comes, he automatically transitions into that role.
Yeah.
Now, considering the difference in culture between these two things, do you feel that where you are, Sai, and what you've been able to do thus far, this is something you are going to integrate into your family?
For me, I would say yes, because I mean, the real estate industry, it's a good industry. Either way, I would say any other industry is a good industry, because we need each other to survive. But you see, that's where personally for me, I say I would envy the Asians, because they basically grow their kids into whatever line of work that they are doing. And you see that going to the child to work, let them understand the ins and outs of what they do is very, very important. Because it doesn't make any sense for me to say succeed in my field of work, and I do not want any of my kids to pick it up from there. You see, that's why you find most of the times that the head of a home, being a man, unapata ame thrive kwa a certain industry, kuwa able to provide a very good lifestyle for the family, and then unfortunately when they pass on, then TD dies. You find the rest of the family, they sell off the business, so on and so forth. So you don't find there's someone who can pick it up and run with it from there, which is always a very bad thing, because you see, you never want to take the heart out. You see, as you start any business, you find that yes, you need to put a lot of hours, you need to be the face of the business, but you see, as time goes, you need to have successors, such that now the business moves away from you being a person. I read somewhere that most of the people in business, they think they're entrepreneurs, but they are basically self-employed. There's a very big difference. You can be self-employed. You can move from self-employed to now business owner before you become an entrepreneur. Because with an entrepreneur, you take yourself out. You have systems that you can try. So as Africans, I would say it's very, very important we lack that and have that in our culture, in our homes, so that we have generations upon generations of building upon a sort of brand.
Okay, that's a candidate to telling nakumbuka nilingana dada kuwa mtu wa biashara. But for the life of me, I could not say what he did. Singers sema what he did. All I know is that I've been to his office once or twice. I saw it was an actual office, things were going on, but I didn't know what was going on. Yeah. And even me going into business years up, I think for me, I've come to understand the value of having that sort of continuity, because it is a thing in the African setting that there's so many people who start businesses, but those businesses 10, 20 years down the line, you're not finding them offer. Why? Because there was no one who was going to continue that business. Like this year, I was fortunate enough to have a quote-unquote interview or be in the same room. The owner, one of the directors of Pedi Investment, the SO Jazz Pedi, and that he has been in Nakuru in that business for more than 50 years. And see it kitrenyale, it came from the parents and now it's pursuing it, and he's doing the same with the children. Yes. And you can see like a stark difference, because this thing has been progressively growing over the years, because basically the amount of work where you treat people compounded from one generation to another and to another. So that is something I would really like us to emulate. Now, moving away from that, you've been in high school, started Stories of Biashara there, which you gave me a hard time when I end up and dropping you the same. And it's Kubuka, what was the principal's name? Mr. Goyani. Hey, day one, administration blowers. Mama Teddy, we've just met. Yeah? But I think growing up and living, I came to understand more than anything that there's a difference between mischief and being misunderstood. It is very common when I join the African setting, especially in the generation I grew up, he then fall forward. Ukienda hivi ama hivi, if you deviate, you are the problem.
Yes.
Yeah, you are the problem. And seeing where you stand now and seeing the path that you took, I came to understand now there's a difference between being mischievous and being misunderstood. Because when people deviate from what is normally the norm, like, why are you doing this? Yeah, why can't you just follow the set path? Yeah, and you keep attending one of the people who are in international schools. Yeah, you see what kids are doing. You see what they're encouraged to do. Their cultures are completely different. Yeah. So before we even move into now going fully into the business market, with what you were able to see being a school, what did it put in you in terms of how you want to raise up your children?
Say, for me, just as you say, school Like for me, how I felt with school. Most of my experiences started from high school, basically at Kenya. Militai was a very good setup for that because it exposed you to a lot of different people, a lot of different things. You learn definitely how other people think, how other people do their things. But yeah, you are right. And you see the challenge that have with the education system. I wish, because I know the government does have the resources. You see, international schools, they one of the biggest things that they offer is exposure, and nothing else. They offer exposure. With our system, the 844 system, you find that we need to stick to a certain path. If one deviates, that person is a problem. It basically does not have any room for someone to explore something and grow with it. Yet, we have great minds here in the country, people who can do a lot, but the education, the system of education that is offered, a lot the public schools and so on, does not give room for that. Probably except for the few teachers who like want these kids to grow fast something. You know, sometimes you find also system is there too much, but people forget that we need to change things up every now and then. There are people who follow the system too much. They want to become like robots. And you find sometimes there are teachers who have that keen eye of noticing that, hey, this child might be up to something. So, yeah, for me, high school was a learning ground for me. Not really in the sense of education as much, but also in life, because you get to understand what makes people tick. Just as you said, I realize that when you solve a problem, people will resonate with it. So the business world is basically about a certain need or a certain problem they solve. They're giving people an need, you are solving a particular problem for them. That is basically what business is about. So I would say for me, a learning ground for that was high school. Now moving into life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let us now transition. You've finished high school. I remember you almost immediately went into the job market, and in that there were stages. Yeah, it started with the casual jobs we call meningai. Then you progressed into sales, and then finally you got into the real estate industry. Yeah, but this is me first. To be first one, you getting into the real estate industry. Was it for you an intentional decision? I'm going into real estate, or was it an opportunity that you found that you ran?
I started out, yes, as you said, with running some manual jobs here and there. Then I think I'll give a very big shout out to my cousin, Nika Mayo. He's the one who introduced me to the field of sales. He's always been very, very aggressive on it. That's one thing I learned about it, because he's done sales for such a long time. So that is when I now moved into sales. Now, coming to real estate, it's not something I made a deliberate decision. Just in that path of mine of sales, I was introduced to a company. Twende huku kazi ya sales. So pole being there, you start to love what you do, because like I think I started doing sales in SIM cards. Hey. Yes, SIM cards. So you see, you are selling SIM cards. Pole. SIM cards are very affordable. Almost everybody can. Even today, almost everybody can afford it. Then you move into the real estate industry, whereby unaambiwa ploti ni 200. No, that one was a big shift for me. I used to ask myself, nani anataka kuuzia kitu hii pesa yote hii, nani atanunua? Because my mindset had not shifted yet to know that there are people who want this thing and can afford it. So Pole being in that field and now meeting the different kinds of people, because I remember the company I started with, the first plot tulikuwa napewa ilikuwa ya kwanza ilikuwa 195, ingine ilikuwa 200 then after about 3 months we were introduced to a plot worth $500 million. Sasa tukasema kwisha, sasa hii hakuna watu watatu. So I think from there, that is when I came to love that industry, because you realize that just when you think something is not your, you find that it is such a piece of cake for other people. So I came to realize that again, and that is the beauty for me in sales, is meeting the different kinds of people. You meet the different kinds of people, they have different ideas, they have different ways of thinking. So you also learn on the job. It's not just about selling. For me, it was about learning on the job. And I think Pole now with the real estate industry, I loved the job because I was learning on the job, learning about different things from different people. So it became now a passion. Yeah, I would say sales helped me love the real estate industry, because you see, real estate is a commodity that people need, but not everybody can afford. There are others who do not, because definitely as we've grown up, coming back to culture, we know at some point in time you want land, you want a home, things like that. So sometimes you find that these are commodity that most people, at the back of their mind, they know they need it. So unapata, you understand what goes into someone's mind into pitching this particular property. What does someone think when instead of buying one, they buy 2, they buy 5, they buy 10? You go and understand why is it that someone is borrowing money to be able to acquire this particular property. So that's something that made me love this particular industry, because you get to understand a lot of things, and you get to understand how some things work, how some things evolve.
Okay.
Yeah.